everyone. Welcome to an exciting AMA session. Ask Me Anything with Dexter Zhuang on managing personal finances. So I'm Sasmini, your host for the day and chapter director for the Digital Nomads CMX Connect community. So before we move on to the conversation at hand, let me give a brief, like a shout out to our CMX Connect chapters who are hosting today. And also for those who are hearing about CMX for the first time, CMX Connect Global is a community of over 15,000 community professionals around the world, connecting with each other, learning together, and growing the community industry. So CMX Connect Digital Nomad chapter is organizing and hosting this event along with CMX Connect chapters like Legos community, who are supporting us by spreading the word among their members. And a special mention need to be made for our community partner, Asian Wonder Women. It is a community with a vision to help Asian women gain location independence and financial freedom to roam around the world on their own terms. So big shout out to Asian Wonder Women community as well. And without a further ado, let me introduce our moderator for the day, Dulitha Vijayawantha. Dulitha is a serial entrepreneur and currently working on the Aristotle HQ, a generative AI startup focused on B2B sales for founders. So Dulitha, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Let's first take a vote on where everyone is from. Can you go to the chat and just put in where everyone is from? Then we can see how we can cater this session across to everyone in geolocations. All right. Answers are coming in. This evening, we are going to be talking about an exciting topic, how to manage personal finances. I'm sure this is something that would have pulled your hair out multiple times during your life, but there is a method to this madness, and that's what we are going to explore today. Joining me today, we have Dexter Zhuang, creator of your beloved newsletter, Money Abroad. So Dexter, what's your story? Can you tell us how you became fascinated about personal finances?
Absolutely. Growing up, I think money was always something top of mind for me and my family as a first generation kind of like immigrant family in the U.S. My mom owned a Chinese restaurant. My dad was a engineer, and when I was growing up, there were a lot of financial challenges. So it was all something that was kind of like top of mind for me on how I could learn, a set of tools and skills to then navigate my life a little bit differently as an adult versus how my parents did it. Fast forward to the past 3 years, I've been living abroad. I'm originally from the US. I grew up in the US. I spent most of my young adult life there. But I lived in Singapore for the past 3 years. And before that, I was a digital nomad for about a year. And I learned that money gets really complicated when you move abroad. Like it's already like pretty hard, when you're just living in your own, country. But when you move abroad, things get even more difficult with things like bank accounts all the way to investing in taxes. So I started Money Abroad just to start sharing some of my learnings, from my experiences in living abroad for now the past 4 years, but also to share stories and kind of ideas that I've synthesized from talking to other expats in this broader kind of expat and digital nomad community. And we talk about building wealth living abroad, and we talk about how to do it across a bunch of different kind of life journeys, professions. So that's why I write Money Abroad, and that's why I'm here with you today. In my other kind of professional life, I've also been working in tech for the past nearly a decade in Silicon Valley and Southeast Asia, companies like Dropbox and Send It. So I speak a lot also from the experiences of tech worker and as an operator in the industry, and having some exposure to fintech as well. So I share some lessons learned, from that industry point of view, and also, kind of, there's a lot of tech workers now traveling and living abroad too. So I share things from that point of view.
That's an amazing story that you said about like from your family upbringing and the challenges that you have, like if you're working from one place and then you travel to a different place, how taxes work. It's actually very complicated because you have like a lot of different rules, and you can fall a prey quite fast to different things that you won't even understand. So I think this is like your newsletter is one of my favorite newsletters. I recommend everybody to subscribe to it because it talks a lot about intricate details where other people just write on the surface, because most of the content out there on the internet is probably made for, like, I guess, mature markets, and that it's not made for people who are traveling across to different places. So I think it's like one of the a really good content place. So before we dive into the AMA, guys, Dexter has prepared a 101 on personal finances to get everybody up to speed, the same page. So we will go through that first, and then we will jump on to the AMA questions. You can put all the questions that you guys have about the AMA on the Zoom chat, and then we'll pick from that and take it forward from there. Over to you, Dexter. Let's go through the 101 content.
Yes, just to reiterate what Delita has just said, please share your questions. I would love for this session to kind of not be one direction. I would love for it to be conversational. Let's make this a discussion. I would love for even some of you to, if you're open to it, kind of share your stories and share your journey as a nomad and expat as well. But without further ado, I'll just quickly run through maybe a couple key takeaways that I have for you today. One is, what is a digital nomad and what is an expat? I think that topic, I get asked that question sometimes, so I just wanted to clarify that. And then I'll share just a couple quick tips, for any folks who have just moved abroad or, just started working remotely. I think these tips would be most applicable to you. So next slide. Cool. Okay. So maybe just a quick question to everyone. How many of you, would say you're a digital nomad right now? You can just like type in the chat. You're a digital nomad. All right, Ariel. It says meaning. All right, we got some digital nomads. And how many of you would say you're more of an expat? Okay, I think folks are a little bit shy right now. So maybe I'll first, talk about the bullets on the screen here of what is a digital nomad versus an expat. And this is just my kind of take on it. So the difference between a digital nomad and expat, for me, is that a digital nomad moves abroad while working for a company that's not in their resident country. So, if you're living in Sri Lanka now and you want to call yourself a digital nomad, maybe you're working for a company that's, not in Sri Lanka at that moment. And you're working 100% remotely, and maybe you've relocated temporarily, but your real goal is to kind of like travel from place to place to place. Whereas for expats tend to move abroad more for working purpose, and they are working for a company that's going to be in their resident country. They're working remotely or in person. So not only remotely, but also, in person locally. And finally, they relocated more permanently versus digital nomads are relocating more temporarily. So that's a quick summary of digital nomad versus expat. Next slide. All right, now we're going to jump into just a few quick tips for folks who are just moving abroad for the first time, or maybe you've only started living abroad for a few months and you're still learning about what you need to take into account when it comes to personal finances. So here's just a few quick tips. All right, so one of the things I want to start with is just talking a lot about automation. So one of the pain points that I felt when I first moved abroad is, hey, I have all of these bank accounts in my home country. I also have all of these bills I need to pay, in my home country. There's my credit card bills, and I also have investment accounts in my home country as well. So given I have these various kind of transactions I need to do in my home country, how am I going to do that while I'm living abroad? In this case, my home country was the US. I'm living abroad in Singapore. Does that mean I need to manually, make a remittance every time I would need to make a bill payment? Well, that's kind of painful because then I have like all of these different due dates. And if I need to make investments, I'm definitely going to forget that on a day-to-day basis. So my, preference when it comes to personal finances is really set and forget whenever possible. And when it comes to having finances in your home country versus like overseas country, if you have accounts in both places, then there is a way to automate your cross-border transfers, so you can automate all your transfers into one system. So the way I do that is by using money transfer apps like Wise or Revolut. Works as well in this case. And one of the features that's a little bit hidden in Wise that people don't know about, when I tell them, is scheduled transfers. So if you go into your Wise account, you can actually schedule transfers ahead of time, and you can also set them up as recurring transfers. This is a great feature because you can actually say, hey, once a month, once I get my paycheck in my resident country bank account, then I'm going to set up a automated transfer from Wise to send money from that bank account to my home country bank account. And that's going to help me with bill payments. That's going to help me with maintaining my investment contributions. And then I don't need to think about it anymore. That's kind of like the vision for Why automation, and the tool that you can use is Wise and Revolut for that. So that's tip number one. I'll pause there. Any questions around this, by the way?
I have like a insight into it from like a country with in Sri Lanka, the cross-border transfers is very limited. It's super hard to like go through Wise. So like even to set up a Wise account, it's super hard for us. So I think is there any other cross-border, because even PayPal is like, we can't set up PayPal either unless like you have like a company set up in like US or like Singapore. We are unable to set up all those accounts as Sri Lankans. So do you have any other suggestions? Even if it is not there, like I have done my research as well, so I know that there is not much suggestions available for Sri Lankans. But in terms of other countries in Asia, like are there any regulatory barriers like that you need to sort of consider? Yeah, like
so Revolut would be the other one that has quite a lot of coverage.
Okay.
But for Sri Lanka in particular, do you have a cross-border application that you prefer to use?
In Sri Lanka, we don't have, that's right. So what we have like
Delita sounds like a business opportunity.
No, because there is a regulation
No,
for that.
it's a highly regulated, highly regulated
Yeah.
industry.
So here, like Maggie is joining from Nigeria, even for her, vice is bit tough. So I think like there are like suggestions in your newsletter for like one of the editions that if you can add a few suggestions for us as well, that would be awesome.
Yes, this is a great point. And Wise and Revolut will only have a certain amount of coverage, and hopefully, they keep expanding their coverage. And eventually, Sri Lanka and Nigeria will be considered, part of their coverage. For now, what I would suggest looking at is this could also be your bank as an option. Sometimes banks will have scheduled transfer kind of capabilities. So that would be the other set
Dexter,
of tools I would look towards.
I have a question in regards to that. Maybe you
Yep.
can like an insight. Is it, for example, like you can set up like an LLC sort of a setup in the US or like in a mature market and sort of do your transactions through that? Do you think like that's like a good idea, or what's your thoughts around that? Because that's something that I've seen few people do as if you're an independent consultant, you set up like a business and you kind of do all your transfers through that.
That's an interesting idea, and depending on your goals, it seems reasonable that would be an option on the table. Yeah, so Delita mentioned a great point, which is why not, if you're doing work as a remote worker, why not do your remote work actually through a business entity that's set up in another country that has a lot of these fintech tools available. For example, the US, or you could set up an entity in Singapore, or you could set up an entity elsewhere as well. And that might give you access to different banks and different money transfer tools.
All right, I think we can continue with your presentation. I'm collecting more questions across from the audience.
Yeah, that was great. That was a great insight, though. I like that one. Is that something that you've personally done as well, Delita?
Yep, I have personally done that because it's something that I have found very it's quite difficult to do it otherwise, like to manage like transfers and things like that. So I have set up like a personal LLC where I use that for most transfers across.
That's very insightful. Yeah. So if anyone has questions on setting up a personal LLC, talk to Delita.
No. I mean, I don't want to be responsible on the legalities.
Kidding.
But yeah.
But that's a great experience. Yeah. Okay. So my next point is more on tracking your finances holistically. What I mean by this is, often I see folks who are tracking, their money just in terms of one currency, like back in their home country. They're not thinking about all of their accounts in their new country. So what I mean by holistically is tracking your finances across your different currencies, and then tracking your assets and liabilities across those currencies. You might be relocating only temporarily, but even then, if you want to know kind of how you're tracking towards your long-term financial goals, whether it's you want to save up for a particular investment or particular life experience, or for your family, it's pretty hard to do that without having that holistic picture. So what my partner and I do is actually she's Australian, I'm American, so she still has accounts in Australia. we have accounts in Singapore and I have accounts in the US. So we actually aggregate everything into a sheet, and then we denominate everything in USD. I don't think she likes that, but I propose that because that's the easiest at this point, because I have the most accounts. But we also create columns for SUD and for AUD, and then we use Google Sheets, kind of like currency exchange functions, to then calculate out everything. So that's tracking your finances holistically. Any questions on that one? Or anyone want to share actually their experiences with how they track their finances across these countries?
I think I have like a small insight to this also, because I use this app called Money Lovers to track most of the finances across. And whenever, so what we do is that on Money Lovers, you can set up like different wallets, and you can say when you move to a different country, put its own wallet, but you make sure that the app is fully tracking for on its own, like let's say a stable currency, let's say USD, and you're always like tracking it across. You're putting the inputs in, let's say your the currency that you're paying things in, but you're always tracking, as what you said, Dexter, on like a single currency. And that app actually has like a neat CSV export. You can export it out and then put it to Google Sheets and kind of do your like other tracking things. But I think especially like if you travel abroad and you have to use like cash, tracking becomes a bit of a nuisance. So if you like use an app like that on the phone, it helps you to kind of be very disciplined across that. That's something that I personally found.
That's a great example. I like that one a lot. What's the tool called? Money Love?
Money Lovers.
Great. Yeah, maybe yeah, could you drop in a link to that in the chat? Okay.
I'll drop that link.
Okay. One other example of an app that tracks multi-currency and also does auto categorization for expenses that are gonna help you save time is Lunch Money. That is a paid app, so it's a investment, but what it does do is integrate with various kind of bank accounts across the world. Its coverage is still kind of getting there when it comes to integrations, but it does have multi-currency tracking capabilities. That looks like Money Lover is also similar to that, without the bank account integrations part.
Yeah.
Nice. Let me also just drop in Lunch Money. Okay. Does anyone else want to share their experience? Now we'll move on to the next tip. Okay, so this one is not specific to expats and nomads, but I think it's just specific to all of us as people. Life kind of gets busy and we tend to forget about investing, but one of the most powerful aspects of investing is compound interest and growing your money through compound interest over time, for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, can really help lead to large returns for you, whether that's for goals like retirement or whether that's like saving up for buying a house or whatever kind of financial goal that you have. But the tip here is really to use automation as well here to invest regularly. So don't let busyness kind of get in the way of you building your investment portfolio. Automate these investment contributions wherever you can. So sometimes you can do this from the bank's website or their mobile app. This will depend on the kind of like technical sophistication of your bank. But if they have scheduled transfers, look for that as a feature. Sometimes you can also automate this from the brokerage side. So maybe the brokerage might have a mobile app or a website where you can also link it to your bank and schedule the transfers that way. So after you do that automation, then compound interest can kind of do the work for you. And you don't have to think too much about it. Again, this goes back to the principle of set and forget. Okay, that's investing early and regularly. Next slide. All right, this point is on, don't ignore overseas investments. What I mean by this is sometimes I've noticed expats or nomads, they'll move overseas and then they have everything back at home, but then they don't really think about what's the opportunity kind of right in front of them now that they're a resident of a new country. So an example of this is in Singapore, there's actually supplemental retirement accounts available, which are kind of like tax advantage retirement accounts available for even foreigners in Singapore. But most of the foreigners that I know in Singapore, when I talk to them about this, they actually don't even know this exists as an opportunity. So that's one very niche example, but take a look at your resident country, and sometimes you might find these types of tax advantaged retirement account opportunities or tax incentives for foreigners, and that might lead to new opportunities for you. Another set of opportunities is thinking about your employer. And sometimes employers will have employer-based retirement accounts, and they might offer things like contribution matching. And they might even offer you the ability, let's say if you leave your resident country. So I know, for example, some global tech companies, what they'll do is, let's say you move, to Singapore, and then you work there temporarily as an expat, and then after 2 years you leave. They will let you basically withdraw your contributions that you made to the retirement account, as long as you are not gonna stay permanently. You don't become a permanent resident. You don't become a citizen of the country. Then they would allow you to withdraw that set of savings and investments. And that's quite different because in a lot of typical employer-based retirement accounts, you kind of have to, you can't touch the retirement account until like a certain age.
I have a specific thing regarding this overseas investment part, right? I think one of the things that a lot of people misses out is that the investment returns that you get is actually proportional to a lot of countries' GDP. So GDP growth across countries. So imagine you look at countries that are like emerging markets. The growth that you can have or the returns that you can have is actually much higher if you really pick the right ones across on those investments across on overseas markets. That's why a lot of large investors actually move into small markets, because the growth rate on those markets is quite high. That's actually one of the big things that I've realized later on.
That's an excellent insight as well there, Dilitha. And I think also looking at for example, Southeast Asia, a lot of investors from the Western world have moved to Southeast Asia or are starting funds or, becoming partners in funds in Southeast Asia because they see the demographic shifts and because of young working population and the rising middle class and all these kind of economic factors. They're more interested in investing in businesses in the region. And that's not to say like, take out your wallet and start, investing in all of these like businesses in Southeast Asia. But the point is don't ignore those opportunities when you are also at a competitive advantage because you are actually now living in this place. And I think that's the key takeaway there. Okay, yeah, next one. Okay, this is a pretty simple one. This is also not pertaining to expats and nomads in particular. But I wanted to throw this in there just in case it's helpful for anyone who's unfamiliar with this rule. The 50-30-20 rule is a pretty simple rule which says, for budgeting purposes, if you're kind of confused about how do you budget, how do you decide how much to spend and on what, then this is kind of a best practice rule. And what it says is 50% of your kind of income you can spend on your needs. Needs are things like, okay, your housing, your food, the really critical stuff that you need day to day. 30% is for wants. Wants are, things like, oh, you want to go on vacation, you want to have a new life experience. And then 20% for your savings and investment. So those would be more for kind of like long-term spending and long-term needs, long-term wants. So that's a pretty simple kind of like budget framework. Though, a lot of people don't like the word budget, so you can kind of call it whatever you want. A spending rule is what I like to call it. But this is a pretty simple one. Cool. Okay, next slide. All right. This is a little bit more of a mindset tip, but one thing that I've also observed from some more high achieving, folks who move overseas or people who are, kind of aggressively trying to save up for something. This is just a reminder to say, hey, you can cut back on things that you don't care about, but also don't be afraid, to spend lavishly on the things that you actually want to do and experience. Especially, if you're a nomad or expat living overseas, like one of the most unique kind of life experiences that you could have is now right in front of you. And you can actually use your money now to help you live that set of experiences to the fullest. So definitely, with all of the prior 5 tips, they're not meant to say, hey, you have to focus all of your money and investment on just being as frugal as possible. That's not what I want the takeaway to be here today. The goal of money is to really help you unlock, more of your time and, your life experiences that you want to achieve. And if that means spending some money, then great, do that. Then that's going to help you actually do what you want. So just use money to help you get to what you want faster there. No, Margaret has been using the 50-30-20 rule for 4 years. Love it. Great. Margaret, do you have any tips for folks using the 50-30-20 rule?
Oh, I can actually speak. Oh, hi everyone. So for me, basically, the first thing I do is whenever I get my salary, I just save first. Because one thing I've realized is um so many things can spring up on you unintentionally and intentionally. So I immediately save my 20%. It's automated, but if push comes to shove and the salary doesn't arrive when it's meant to, I make sure that I actually do that myself. And then the 80% left. So the next I take it a step further by now breaking it down again into 50, 30, 20. So I try to use 50% for the first 2 weeks. And then as the month is drawing to an end, I don't know if another person experiences that, but most times it looks like the end of the month just seems to be so long. So I try to make sure that I don't spend so much at the start of the month, and I'll be frugal, get what I need, not what I want at that particular point. And then as the month is now ending, I can now loosen up a bit and start taking care of my wants, so that I have, yeah, taking care of my wants. And another thing I usually do is when I get my salary after saving, I reward myself. So yes, I've put in the work. I deserve this. So I reward myself with something I've always wanted. So when I'm trying to be frugal for the rest of the month, I am not feeling guilty. Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing, Margaret. Yeah, anyone else want to share their experience with spending rules? Yes, self-care as an actual kind of line item in the monthly budget is great. I like that thinking.
I can share like how we sort of budget as well, because it's like at the beginning it was a bit tough because we had to like sort of since we are a couple and we traveled together, we had to bring our budgets together. And first I was just managing my own personal finances. Now we have like a merge account that we sort of like spend on everything and keep track of everything at once. So in that sense, like it's not the same thing that we started with, but we are at a stage where, so we started with like just maintaining like an Excel sheet with like on monthly on basis, with like a few budget line items saying like for person for like food this much, we like this is the budget amount and all of that. And for like 5 or 6 months straight up, we just exceeded the budget all the time. Like at the end of the month, sometimes we don't even like, we forget to like keep track of finances as well. So we just learned from all those things. Like we kept learning, and like we increased the budgets to sort of suit the lifestyle, as well as we increased. One thing that we figured out was like the as like when with the time we increased our budgets and we increased our earning capacity capabilities as well, as in like we try to earn as so that we sort of can maintain the lifestyle that we are maintaining in terms of like nomadic lifestyle and all of that. So um I don't think we have the 50-30-20 rule at the moment as a couple together yet, but for in our lives separately for savings and everything. So it just goes into like a different type of way. So I have like a percentage of my like the consultancy fees that goes into a separate emergency fund. Like that, I have built a system. So it's like slowly coming together, but yeah, it's like we are still in the middle of it. There is no 50-30-20 rule yet. Yeah, but like managing it and tracking it will help to identify what is your role in terms of like budgeting and managing finances. finances as well. So that is something we learned over the past 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I love what you're kind of what you've organized like kind of as a couple system, you know. It's really interesting to always hear from couples how they organize their finances, because every couple is so different in their kind of views on money, and then how they approach setting up their money systems. So my partner and I, we we share a joint account, but we also have separate accounts, and our paychecks go into those separate accounts first. And then we'll have a kind of like a joint budget that we're working from. And all the income, for the joint budget needs to come from our separate accounts. So then we'll both transfer to this joint account on a monthly basis, and that will form the budget for the month of what we can spend. Everything else, like in our own accounts, is kind of up to the individual, what we want to do. I think things will probably evolve or change, like if we, because we don't have kids yet, but if we wanted to start a family, or, had much larger kind of joint expenses, then maybe we might change that, like have the joint account be kind of like main account, and then the individual accounts might be more secondary.
Awesome. I think, Dexter, that was like, the tips have been really cool. There are a few more questions that I got from other folks earlier on, which were regarding like sort of like philosophy of like how you want to think about money and like kind of managing it, and how your thoughts have changed over your, let's say, your the past 10 years of your life. Can you tell a little bit about that story as well, like how you think about money? Because I think that will really help anyone in the audience who's kind of planning their finances.
Absolutely. Okay, that's a really interesting topic, which is really the psychology of money, right? Like, what's our attitude towards money? And I think this is really informed also by our life experiences, especially like childhood, and our parents' relationship to money, and all of that good stuff. So for me, in the last 10 years, I would say what happened 10 years ago is I was a college student, and I had just graduated from college, and actually, Amy here was one of the program managers at the International Institute of my college, and at that point in time, I had a very different view on money. Money to me was something that I knew I didn't have a lot of, and so I had a much more kind of frugal mentality and approach to money. So it's more about making sure I hit certain kind of savings percentage goals, really counting kind of my expenses a little bit more strictly. Fast forward to today, how I think about money is more about starting with my personal goals of, okay, how do I view the lifestyle that I want to have in the future. So for me, I'm targeting kind of certain lifestyle goals over the next 10 to 20 years. And I think that was something that I just didn't do, in my early 20s. I couldn't think that far ahead. I'm like, okay, what do I actually want out of my lifestyle in like 10 to 20 years? But, after living as an adult for a while, I think I know the answers to that a little bit more. And based on those lifestyle goals, then I actually work backwards of how much income do I need in order to support those lifestyle goals and help me achieve those? So I think that working backwards part is really important, and that's what a lot of expats, nomads, but also just people living back home kind of miss, is they start with, okay, here's how much money I need, but then it's like, why do you need that money? What is it going to be for? And that's what you want to start with first, is really answering the why. And for me, that why is really about achieving a certain amount of wealth that would then help me be more free with my time, so that I can spend that time with my family. I can spend that time with friends, working on creative projects, and having the flexibility to travel, have certain kind of like life experiences, some of which I'm already doing now, but some of which I kind of want, more of by that point in time. And so based on that lifestyle goal, then I work backwards to calculate the actual income I'll need, and then use money as a way to help me achieve that time. So you can be money rich or time rich, right?
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that people just don't figure out initially, because that they're thinking like money is like counting dollars in your account, or like money is like a never ending kind of counting thing. But it's actually more of a tool for what you want to really, the life you want to build. And that's actually something that you kind of figure out over a period of time, right? So it's a little one of those things that you can get into. I think Amy has raised her hand. We can give the question to her.
Hi. Yeah, thanks. I love that idea, Dexter, too. Wonderful to see you. But also love that idea of, going from that place of like not having or feeling like you don't have enough, and then having to change that. And I think like for me in my own journey, that rings true to like, I knew I wanted that flexibility for more travel. I knew, even though it was like maybe at a different point in my life, right? I have a kid, I, have a home, I, trying to uproot from sort of what had been my professional journey and move to something that was more in alignment with the lifestyle I wanted. But I realize now, looking back, it was like money and fear and this like scarcity mindset that like kept me for so long from taking that leap, right? So it's like I had to almost like rewrite that and think about the vision of what I wanted, and sort of some of it was trust that the work would be there, that the money would be there, and some of it was also just like really kind of flipping the scripts of what was possible and being willing to take those risks. And I just wonder how many others where it's like the money is the thing that hangs people up from making the decision to kind of take the leap towards something like a nomadic kind of lifestyle, where there's lots of different ways to do it, and that doesn't have to be the hang up. So it just really rings true what you're sharing, and from my own journey too. So thank you.
I love that. Yeah. What you said about flipping the script. Definitely. Yeah.
Thank you, Amy, for sharing that. I think one of the things that got into my mind when she spoke about it is that I think when we were growing up, most of the time, like your parents would always say like, oh, you need to get a job, right? You have like either be an engineer, a doctor, or like a lawyer. Okay, that's it, right? So if everyone's like programmed from the very beginning to think like that, then they always think like, okay, that then you're in a box, in a frame, right? So you always think, okay, if I do a job, I get money and I keep on doing it forever, right? That's the thought process that you end up thinking. And it's really hard to get out of that, right? Because
it's very easy to stay in that box.
Yeah. It's
very, very easy.
Comfortable, right? It's very comfortable.
Yeah.
Cool. Another one that I got from the audience was about like sort of like mythbusters. What do you think is like most commonly shared among for people who's really like maybe scratching the surface of the subject, what are like the most common myths that people like hear from others?
Yeah, this is it's quite interesting. I think one of the common myths that I'm hearing, or that I'm also just observing people do, is when it's this is timely given the current situation, but when it's a bad market, it's like you wanna take all your money out. You wanna you wanna just stop investing. You just wanna give up on like finances, just hoard cash, move everything into a bunker and say goodbye because the world is ending. And I think that's fine if that's kind of the approach that you want to take. But the benefit of us living in this time period now is there's a lot of at least past data and past evidence that we can look to as guidance for the future. So I say that specifically as it applies to investing and long-term investment. Because one of the things that I've seen people do is take all their money out right now. And just, even if it's lost, they're like, whatever, I just want to hold cash. And I think that's just been shown through past data that actually, if you make those investments during these time periods of, down markets, then that actually leads to reward in the future. That leads to returns and positive outcomes in the future. And if you decide, to panic sell everything, then that does not lead to rewards, or at least that has not led to rewards historically. There's always the chance that, the world could end, but then we just have bigger problems. Then we shouldn't be worried about our investments. We should probably be worried about, much bigger issues. Yeah.
I think that's a very good point, and I think like big part about money is all about managing fear and greed, because if you are aware about fear and greed, you will be quite how do I say, careful on how you think about things. Because in this, like as you said, like in this market, if you just pull out all your investments, you are basically being fearful, right? You are kind of being led by fear. And like sometimes what happens is a lot of people like do the opposite also, where they might like see like these really lucrative investment opportunities, but they're actually like too good to be true. So it's the two ends of the coin that you're sort of managing. And I think that's very like important to be aware, because once you start scratching the surface of this subject, you start to think, like you start to realize a lot of different things about how money is actually managed, which is like very interesting subject altogether, right?
You just mentioned, the reverse, which is like just 2 years ago, everyone was like, I'm going to put my money into everything.
I'm going to get a second mortgage.
Yeah. And it's like this Warren Buffett quote, which is, be fearful when others are greedy, be greedy when others are fearful. That's a pretty popular kind of investing quote. I do like it because I do think it, has a healthy amount of truth to it, which is if other people are really greedy, then generally there's probably, a market is just like supply and demand. So there's probably a lot of demand. And you have to really ask, do you think the supply is going to like keep up with that demand? And then the same thing for the reverse. Yes, please send your questions here in the chat.
We are about to run out of time, so if anybody has any questions, we'd love to get them onto the chat.
Oh, I think Ariel had a topic which was kind of interesting, which was about for nomadic lifestyle, do you prefer using a no FX fee credit card or Wise all the way for your daily spend in foreign countries? And Ariel, one quick question actually for Wise. Do you see them using the Wise debit card? I see. Okay. That's quite interesting. So when it comes to the Wise debit card, I think you correct me if I'm wrong, but the advertised kind of benefit for the Wise debit card is that you can use the funds that are sitting in your Wise account, to pay for transactions. And so you might not need a bank account in that particular country, or you have it, but it's like through Wise. So maybe you're a nomad, maybe you go to visit Singapore, maybe you want to pay for things, but you don't want to use a credit card. You want to actually pay for things using your savings. Then with Wise, you'll be able to do that by transferring money into Wise, and then it kind of like acts as a store of value for your account balance while you're using the debit card there. So that's just one way for you to kind of open up a bank account and then spend using that bank account.
I have another question for you, Dexter, regarding since this is about expats and nomads. What are your thoughts on like fraud when it comes to credit cards, like using across in different countries? Like what's your experience with that?
Which credit cards?
Like using like credit cards or debit cards across in different markets. What are your thoughts about like fraud? Have you had any scenarios where you had to like deal with it?
Yes, definitely. One of the things that I've kind of observed is in Asia, what you'll notice when you're making credit card transactions using like credit cards from Asia is that it will always ask you for a one-time password. When you're making an online transaction, or sometimes even when you're making in person, you'll need to key in your OTP before you can successfully make the payment. But in the US, and I'm pretty sure for Canada, maybe in Australia as well, like there's no OTP. So you can just make a payment without a confirmation from your phone number, and it'll go all the way through. Now, one of the things that some of the credit card companies do offer is you can activate an OTP kind of capability, and sometimes the credit card company might require it, but sometimes it might just offer that as like kind of an optional feature. And you can kind of like take a look at your account settings and see if that's available as a security precaution. You can also set up those kind of security OTPs for your logins as well. So then you don't risk someone just logging into your account unauthorized. Other things one other thing I'll mention is credit card skimming is unfortunately just still a very real thing. And so just be prepared to have a backup plan. Like if your credit card gets skimmed and you need to cancel the credit card, do you have other forms of payment?
I think that last one is quite an important one, because if you only have one card and you are stuck somewhere and you don't have a way to get cash, you are screwed.
Exactly.
I think he's talking from experience. Yeah. Yeah. At one point, like when we were in Malaysia, we had like he lost his SIM card, so we sort of didn't have a way to get the OTPs to make payments to purchase our flight tickets.
Oh no.
Yeah, go through friends to purchase it, and then like at the airport itself, they for like Air India, and there are like requirements when you are purchasing from like a different person's account, then you have like to have a letter of confirmation saying that person enabled it, and this is their like letter of consent, all of that. So it's like a lot of backlog work that you have to do as well. So you need to like really be prepared for those kind of accidental things that can go wrong in your nomad life. Yeah.
That's a great story. And one I'll just add on to this is that if you do have a credit card that requires, an OTP, make sure that you have access to the phone number when you're actually abroad as well. This is quite critical. I've been abroad before. I've tried to use the credit card. I don't have the phone number because it's like with an old SIM card that I've like deactivated. Huge pain in the butt. Like you really have to make sure you're kind of setting up. There's ways to get around this. You can set up a phone number back in your home country using a digital, voice IP, or you can set it up with a SIM card that you can like plug in sometimes when you're abroad, just for these temporary use cases. Also, if you lose your credit card overseas, but then you want to get it back, having a digital or a virtual mailbox in your home country might be useful so that you can get a credit card shipped to you in your home country. And then you can have that digital mailbox then send it to you wherever you are in the world. Sometimes your credit card will offer that service for you, but a lot of times they won't. Then you can just do it for yourself using the remote mailbox. Otherwise, this is where Wise can actually come in handy, Ariel, where with Wise, you might be able to just open up an account and use a debit card in that country, even if you have no kind of like pre-existing employment or like bank account in that country, which is oftentimes a requirement to even set up a credit card in that country. So that's where tools like Wise and Revolut can actually kind of help fill the gap.
Cool. I think we are at the end of the session. Thank you so much, Dexter, for sharing your valuable insights. And I think this was like a really lovely conversation to talk about personal finance, one of my favorite topics also. Over to you, Sasmini, if you have any things that you would like to finish off to the audience.
Oh, thank you so much, everyone. I think it was a very interesting and insightful session for everyone to sort of like get started on managing personal finances. And I think like Dexter's newsletter and Dexter's expertise in the sharing and like the stories that he writes on LinkedIn will help you to level up on your personal finance game as well. So you should definitely check them out. And definitely, let's say all of us get connected. And thank you so much for everyone who is here: Amy, Chamit, Emily, Ariel, Yuben, and Abhishek, and Tejan, and Kenke. So thank you so much for joining in at this time of the day and listening into this as well. And Dexter, you should definitely meet Kenke. I will do an intro later as well. She is an expat who has been living in Singapore for the past 10 to 15 years. So there are like
amazing.
Everyone who is here sort of has like some sort of experience in terms of traveling or being a nomad or like aspiring to be a nomad. Like the Margaret who was here, she want to be a nomad, so she's exploring all sorts of ways around how to manage her personal finances. So I think like the work that we will do afterwards as well will be super insightful for us. Thank you so much for a lovely night, everyone, like and engaging. So yeah.
Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Yeah, look forward to connecting with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.